Welcome back to the HR Green Room, the place where people, culture, and a couple of splashes of green come together. We're your hosts for today. I'm James from Phase 3.
And I'm Adam from Phase 3, Head of Managed Services.
And together we lift the curtain on the world of HR with fresh ideas, honest conversations, and a few surprises along the way. Each episode will ask us what made us green with envy, what deserves the green light, and of course we'll be joined by some brilliant guests who bring their own colour to the conversation. So grab a seat, the show's about to start in the HR Green Room. So welcome Adam to the podcast.
Hi, James.
So today's session, we're actually going to be focusing a little bit more on payroll. Louise couldn't be with us, so I thought I'd rope in a good friend and colleague, Adam, so that we can have a discussion more of a payroll focus for our HR audience. So I'm going to ask you first, Adam, just give us a bit of your career history before Phase 3, what you did, and then what you've done since being at Phase 3, because you've been with us for quite a while as well.
Yeah, so my career started in payroll at the fire service. I was actually working at McDonald's before and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I took a punt and I applied for a job at the fire service. I told them in my interview that I'd done payroll before, and what that meant was at McDonald's I printed the clocking card out and put it in a bag and sent it to the head office to do. So I think they did see through me, but they gave me a chance, and that's where my payroll career began. So I learned a lot from the fire service. I did CIPP while I was there, which was a great help. I then moved into more of a implementation role at another company. Wasn't really for me. I did love payroll, so I came back to payroll at a place in Stockport, did payroll for a while, and then Mike rang me and said, job at Phase 3, we need payroll people, are you interested? And I said, oh yeah, definitely. And I'd worked with Mike before at the fire service, so we'd worked together, and then like you said, I've been at Phase 3 8.5 years now, so it's been a while.
I actually remember your telephone interview being the most chaotic interview I think I've ever been involved in.
Yeah, there was a couple of kids screaming in the background, and I'm trying to give them the angry dad look to say, be quiet, but there's not much you can do when it kicks off.
Yeah, well, no, but you did well, to be fair, so you ended up joining us, and essentially you were our managed service function at that early point, weren't you, when you first started with us?
Yeah, when I first started, I think I was the only person, and when we're interviewing for payroll roles now, I say to the people, we've got a team of 28, 30, where we're up to, but I say I was number one, and we had one customer, and I started this and kind of grew it from there.
Yeah, so you've seen it through from the start.
I have.
Well, we always ask guests the obvious question. Back when you were green, what was something that you did that you probably wouldn't want to do again in your career, or that you learned from, shall we say? It might be a mistake you made or a funny anecdote.
There's probably a couple, which is probably a bad thing to admit.
Line in your interview probably wasn't a good one.
Yeah, probably line in your interview starts at the first one, The first one will have been, I'd arranged to be on a site with a customer. At the same time, I needed to run a payroll, but I was the only person in the payroll department. I thought, it will be fine. And then I'm on the site, everything went fine. Driving back, get a phone call, they need something urgently. So I had to pull over in a lay-by, sit in the boot of my car with my laptop and run the payroll from the boot of the car. All worked out fine, but I'd prefer not to work from the boot of a car.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing with home working. People are doing some really strange things out there, tethered to a phone from a really strange place.
Yeah.
We're quite lucky we have a work from anywhere policy, but I'm not sure that covers working in your boot on a
No,
hard shoulder.
I don't think so.
So we want to talk about some of the most challenging times in payroll. Now, I've got an idea that I might know where you might go with this one, but I'll let you answer first what your most challenging period's been in payroll.
Yeah, I think we're both going to have the same answer because we both went through it together, and it was definitely furlough.
Yeah, the F word, as it's
the F word, as it's known. Yeah, I think we worked 7 days every day. I think we caught up at 5 o'clock at night to see how the day was gone, and then we were starting another round of things, and it was just that, nobody knew what to do.
Yeah,
everybody came to us thinking, help, what do we do? Me and you were learning it kind of on the fly as everybody else was. And the HMRC page, I think at one time when I said to you, I said, it's on its 176th version.
Yeah.
And it didn't tell you where the changes were. So you got to read the whole document to see where the change came from, to see whether it's important, whether it's just a little change. But it was just that I think loads of people, like my brother, he got laid off. And he bought a hot tub, and he was in his hot tub in the garden drinking beer all day. And there I am working out furlough, reading HMRC documents, which are never great.
I think whilst it was one of the most challenging times in payroll, I also think it's one that I'm most proud of for us as a wider payroll team, because it was very challenging in terms of the calculations and the processes. We had an audit at the end from one of our biggest clients. HMRC went in and audited them, and they actually said that we had been over strenuous in terms of the way that we'd applied the legislation. So it could have been kind of one way or the other, and they actually ended up having not claimed enough rather than too much, which was a great place to be in, given that HMRC were looking for those to be repaid. And the auditor actually said to us that on one day there was 17 changes to the legislation around furlough, and nobody could keep up. Even HMRC themselves couldn't keep up. And this was a scheme that was designed very quickly with very little guidance. I don't know if you remember, we have customers with maybe 4,000 employees. On the first iteration of furlough, you had to upload them 50 at a time and type them into the page. I remember doing the reclaims were taking hours and hours and hours, and they kept promising a spreadsheet would come that you could upload, and then the headers never matched, and it was really, really challenging. And all of our customers, as you say, were looking to us for
that guidance.
We were trying to build things in systems to calculate it automatically, but then again, you had the changes of rules. And I think it's fair to say we made some mistakes along the way, as I think everybody did. In that volume. But there's two things I'm most proud of from that time. One is that we didn't charge any client anything extra. So although we were all killing ourselves, and it was a group of us that were working, as you say, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, finishing one furlough calculation, starting the next, and trying to get that processed, as well as all the normal payroll changes. But the fact that we also won the CIPP Payroll Provider of the Year award that year, we were really clear in our communication with customers. We set up a furlough hub on the website, and the whole team at Phase 3 kind of came together to support us with that. And I think that in itself shows the value and the nature of payrollers, doesn't it? That
it does.
When things are tough, payrollers will
get together,
make it work, and give employees the outcome that they need ultimately.
Yeah, and we did that thing for the employers where they were short on money, so we put the claims in early based on what they were going to work, so they could get it in time to pay, because that was the next step, wasn't it? Everybody was doing it after the fact, where there was a big gap in cash flow.
Yeah, exactly. And then you were able to readjust the claims after that, weren't you? So it made a big difference. But yeah, most challenging times. And I suppose the most fun time in payroll, is there a particular time of year that you prefer in payroll, or any particular time that you've really enjoyed what you've done?
I think people think there's a year end, and there isn't really. People think there's a good time. There isn't. I think Christmas is probably the most challenging, because you do 4 weeks work into 2 weeks. But I think the good point of that is that you get then the break. You do get a break from it, and you get that chance to just recharge and relax. I do kind of enjoy when we do P11Ds, because it's something different. But that's going to change to the payroll benefit, so that will probably change again in the future. But that's slightly different, because it's something out of the norm, and we get random customers come to us who we don't actually work with and say we need some help with P11Ds. So it's a chance to kind of meet those new people and go through those processes.
I think it's probably not a time of year for me, but I always find it really interesting when you get a new client in a new industry. So we've worked with football clubs, airlines, catering businesses, hospitality, hotels, pubs, and you see the real difference from a payroll perspective in terms of how people are paid, what people are paid, and the rewards and recognition that people get, and also some of the things that people get deductions for as well, which is quite interesting.
When people have been naughty.
Yes, exactly. And in football land in particular, I am not a particular fan of football, I know you are, but seeing that people got massive deductions if they had a yellow card or a red card or those kind of things, like you don't think about that from a payroll perspective, but it's really interesting to see. And I remember one of the airlines we worked with, I was questioning why the expense claims were so high for some of the pilots, and they said, it's because the pilots have to pay for the fuel for the aircraft on their personal credit card, and then they get it repaid through payroll as an expense grossed up. I was like, why the hell would you be doing that? You're costing yourself thousands there. So, yeah, really interesting working in payroll, definitely, isn't it?
It is. No day is the same.
No, exactly. And one of the kind of hot topics that we're talking about a lot, and in everybody's lips basically, is AI in payroll. So we've got AI in our payroll software. We're quite tentatively launching some of the features, aren't we? But what do you think is going to be the biggest impact of AI in the payroll
I think it's going to be that people will just assume it does it for you. You know, the AI is taking our jobs, but I think payroll is never going to be like that, because I saw a new feature in our software that's coming soon where you can literally copy and paste an email that says, can you pay Ken £100 bonus and do all these things. So when you've got a smaller company, they do just send those emails in, and it wants you to dump the description in. AI will read it, and AI will then pay it based on that. But if they're writing Ken, and there's 3 people called Ken, who's it going to pick? If it's they're writing bonus, but they mean annual bonus or performance bonus, which one will it pick? So I think it's just being really careful that we don't go into kind of automatic gear and just let it do it for us. I think it's really key that the software does have the second step where it goes, is this what you meant? And it will go, Ken Adams, £100 performance bonus. And you can go yes or no, and then it learns. And I think the other thing is it's the privacy, isn't it? So you don't want, you know, you've got to be locally hosted, because you don't just want everyone's payroll data into ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's a really important point. And I think looking at things like that in terms of the use cases is really important, because if you do get an email that says pay Ken a bonus of £100 and it takes you 30 seconds to enter that in the payroll system anyway, what benefit are you actually getting from using the AI tool? I think in payroll in particular, and this is one of my trends that I've suggested for 2026, is that payroll is transactional, it's rule-based, so an AI system can learn and identify when a rule hasn't been followed, and so prompting the user in terms of potential exceptions, and prompting the user in terms of why things are different from last month. I see that as our biggest use case internally, isn't it? That we do for hundreds of clients every single month. This last month you earned this month you earned this. What's the difference and why? And we look through all of our documentation and payslip to payslip to check that, to give our customers the assurance that the pay's right. If AI can say, last month I had a bonus and this month I didn't, or last month I had a salary increase and it was backdated so they had some back pay.
That's the key part of it, isn't it?
Exactly,
That saves us time.
Because we then focus on the actual errors, not trying to find the errors.
Yeah.
And that's where value really does get added, doesn't it, in terms of
It does, and maybe it's used for more complicated things. For if you work part-time but you do overtime, to take you up to your full-time is at plain time, and when you get past plain time it's time and a half, and then if it's a Saturday it's double time. All those different rules I think are where AI will come in, because you can feed the rules in, as you said, it will learn, and then it will tell you, okay, there's 4 hours at plain time, there's 6 hours at time and a half. That's the bit that will probably save you quite a bit of time.
And what's interesting as well is AI tools being used in the payroll department to support payroll, but then also this concept of agentic AI and using agents in particular to support payroll queries. That's an interesting concept in itself, because personally I wouldn't want an AI bot responding to my pay query if they don't understand the question I'm asking, because it can give misleading information, can't it? I mean, we have this with HMRC, God bless them, that even they can give the wrong information, and they're supposed to be the tax and PAYE experts. So having something kind of out in the wild, not being monitored. And I've seen some tools that will propose a response to the employee, but that the payroll person has to review and accept before it actually gets sent. So it's drafting a response for you. You can then make it more human and put the empathy in there around, the apologies for not paying people correctly, if that was the case. But I think that's what we're going to see is really interesting, is whether AI is going to be focused on helping the payroller to improve efficiency and improve accuracy, or whether they're going to replace the human element of responding to queries and actually speaking to people. And another hot topic that's been suggested we talk about is when we switch in payroll systems. So I must hear probably 10 times a month, want to go live in April because it's the best month of the year to go live. And I want to dispel that myth today. So why is April not the right time to go live in payroll, or the best time?
Well, I agree with you. It's not the best time. And the reason it's not the best time is it sounds great because your first live is in April, which is a clean year. But the prep to get that clean year is actually more complicated, because if you do 2 parallel runs, like we would always recommend at least 2 parallel runs, you need your year to dates, but you actually need 10 months. So you need almost a full year. So you'd have it up to January. You then do a February and March parallel, check you're happy, and you roll into April. Yes, great. But the customers had to gather all that year-to-date information, so they've got to get all your levers. It's a lot of work, and it's probably the biggest set of data to actually do to go live in April, where if you were to go live in June, You start your parallels in April with no year-to-dates needed because it's the first month. Really simple. Only live employees, no leavers. You do in April and a May parallel, and you go live in June. It saves the customer a lot of time.
Yeah.
You don't end up with tax issues where someone switched from a code partway through the year and they're on a cumulative and a week one, month one, because everybody's in the first period and it's just that one single month. So, if you think you're going live in April, change it to June. It will save you so much time.
Yeah. And I think we spend the back half of the financial year talking about why April, May, June is the right time to be doing parallels and go live. And the first half of the year, we spent it saying, well, actually, it doesn't really matter because in the first half of the year, if it is a September go live, for example, there's much less year-to-date data to gather, isn't there? That's the key. And when we're talking crossing tax years, that can become more complex.
That's when it's more complex,
But ultimately, you can go live in any month, can't you? It doesn't really matter. But in terms of volume of work, the one thing I consider is if you've got a weekly payroll and you've got 40 weeks of a weekly and 10 months of a monthly, that's a lot of data to gather.
It's a lot of things to go wrong.
Yes, yeah. And balancing that before starting your parallels becomes more complex.
It does, yeah.
But with the solution that we use, for example, we can take the FPSs and scrape it all from them. So it does make the process easier. But with other software that we work with, we know it is more complex.
It is more complex, yeah.
Yeah, so hot tip there. April's not necessarily the right month to go live.
Yeah, but if you're already in the process, don't change it now.
Yeah. Stick with it, yeah. Because extending your parallels is also more of a challenge. And that's an interesting concept in itself, isn't it? Because some of the providers that we work alongside now don't do parallel runs. No. They do reconciliation runs.
Yeah.
What's the difference there?
There isn't really a massive difference. A parallel run would be, like in my example before, we run the February payroll and we run it to the end. You close it down and you open up in March. Reconciliation run is you run the February in the system, you check its happy balances, sign it off, and then basically you back it or back out and go live with your February. Yeah. So you're doing like a test run in effect rather than a parallel.
So checking that the results still match.
Yeah.
But you're not necessarily comparing to a
live system, a previous system, yeah. Okay. So the work is probably about the same. Yeah. Because you've got to do the checks and you've got to do the balances. It's maybe do a reconciliation if you're a little bit smaller and you're short on time.
Yeah. And short on time is often the operative thing there, isn't it? Because we often think of parallel runs as running in parallel in real time. Yeah, but real time doesn't have to be the case with parallels. We can parallel run backwards 2 months to replicate the payrolls and make everything balanced. So if time is an issue, not doing a parallel shouldn't be the answer. The answer should be parallel backwards instead of forwards.
Yeah, and if you do the parallel after the fact, there's not going to be any changes. If you're doing it live and then the live system decides to make a last minute change and forget to tell you, your parallel's out of balance. But at least when it's finished, you've got the end picture already.
Yeah. And the reason we do 2 generally is because the first one we suggest the implementer takes the lead on, but the second one, it's a great enablement experience, isn't it, for the payroll team, if they're running payroll in-house, that is. Yeah. So the other thing that people are talking about right now is moving away from desktop systems. Yeah. So there's one in particular, not mentioning any names, but people are having a mass exodus, aren't they, of this current payroll platform due to them changing the way that they operate and changing pricing ultimately. But in general, desktop-based payroll systems are coming to an end, really, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Yeah. Cloud is the future, basically.
Cloud is the future, and I think going back to the F word again, a lot of our customers were cloud-based, which was great. So when they shut those offices, they had a mad panic to say, we can't get to our desktop. How are we going to run the payroll? And we say, well, it's online. We can log in remotely. We can use it. So simple. If they would have been desktop-based, someone would have had to go in and physically get a machine to be able to run it, which they couldn't do. And I think it's learning from that. And it's the same with us because we have a payroll bureau. If we are desktop based, it's sometimes limited to 1 user at once. 2 people can't be helping on a payroll. But in a cloud based, if something happens with a payroll and we need support, we can do 2, 3, 4 people fixing the errors and looking at the payroll, making the corrections that are needed all at the same time. With desktop based, you're normally limited to 1 user.
Yeah. I do remember syncing problems as well with the old desktop version. If somebody was logged in on a read-only basis, but somebody else was in trying to make changes and then trying to sync them back to OneDrive.
Because it saves to a file, doesn't it? It is a nightmare.
Yeah. Cloud really is the past and the future, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think with desktop, it can be slower because it's running on your PC's power. So if you've got a bit of Excel open and you've got your Teams open, it can slow it down. Cloud-based, it's running on someone else's server.
I remember doing an audit for a bureau in terms of their processors, and their server call it a server, was actually a PC that the system was running on, and it was in the corner under somebody's desk. And one day somebody kicked it accidentally, and it knocked it off, and so the entire payroll bureau was ground to a halt, and nobody realised that they'd kicked it. It took the IT to come in and kind of
go
take it out and plug it back in again for it all to work. But yeah, crazy that was how payrolls were processed. Actually, when I first started in payroll many moons ago, when we were looking back on historical payroll records, I can't remember what the machine was called, but it looked like a big typewriter, and you did key calculations on this big typewriter machine, and it spit out the results on a paper P11. And yeah, so looking back over the history of that was really interesting. So one of the last things that we're going to cover is a controversial one, I suppose. Payroll is at the end of the line of everything, generally, aren't they, in terms of all of the processes upstream. What can HR colleagues do to assist payroll people?
I think it's be aware the impact of what they tell an employee has. So rather than just, an employee says, my sickness has ended, but I'm not going to be paid because it was in the system up to the end of the month, and HR go, okay, no problem, we'll get it sorted. I think it's take that step back and think, where is the payroll cycle up to?
Yeah.
Is it possible? Maybe take it away and say, I've got to speak to the payroll team to see if we can get it in. But if not, we can do X, Y, and Z and always have a backup. I think it's just think about the impact you're having. Just because one person says, I'm thinking of changing from salary sacrifice pension to net. Can you tell me my effect on my net pay?
Yeah.
And the HR go, yeah, no problem. And then the payroll work it out. But if you've got 1,200 employees and everyone comes to the desk and says that, and you've said yes to all of them, that's just a ridiculous task that would never happen.
Yeah.
Seems okay for doing it for one, but then if he says to his mate, I got this calculation, and then they keep saying it and it goes around, I think it's thinking of what you're saying yes is actually going to have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely where they're up to in the cycle, asking for this random calculation, but they're at the final backs process of the check-in. They're not going to be able to do it for you.
Yeah.
Think about where they're up to and just give them the time to process.
I think there is sometimes a lack of understanding between the two teams. Sometimes they work alongside each other, sometimes they don't. And I use this story a lot when I'm talking to HR and payroll people, where there is that, I call it the payroll brick wall. That's kind of shut us down. We're in payroll processing time. You can't talk to me. I'm not.
Yeah.
I was on site with a customer once, and the actual payroll lady answered the phone and said, "I'm processing payroll. I can't talk," and put the phone down on the customer. Essentially, like, craziness. But when I worked back in payroll in a local authority, we had a HR team and a payroll team. And the HR team would process their transactions all month in the system, and there was literally a tray, and they'd put all the forms into this tray, and then it got to payroll cut-off day, and then the team leader would walk around with his tray and plonk it on the payroll's desk, and then they'd start doing all their processing. And then they had this process of it got sent back with like a red pen, sad face, see me kind of thing, like a school teacher, like, you've done that wrong, so it goes back.
Yeah.
There was never any communication. And on my first day I started in that business, I went to payroll and said it was a mid-month payday. I'd been paid from my last job at the end of the month, and I couldn't wait until the middle of the next month to be paid again. That would have been 6 weeks for me.
Yeah.
And I said, can I have an advance? And they said, no. And it was a simple no. There was no discussion, nothing. And to me, who'd come from kind of a really hyper service focused background, that was really shocking that was the case. But what I did when I was promoted in that team, and they hated me for it, the HR person and the payroll person, I made them sit next to each other. So there was a team that looked after schools and a team that looked after the council, and one person was the HR person, the person on the next desk was payroll, and I made them learn each other's job. And I think it was one of the best things that I did there, because ultimately they started to understand all of that friction and frustration that they'd built into the processes. The trays disappeared, and it was a case of, I've done this new starter, do you want to check it? That kind of thing. And the communication opened up massively. So I think even just sitting in that person's shoes, just one payroll process.
Yeah.
And I think payroll people can do something about this in terms of like National Payroll Week and kind of advocating for the payroll profession during that week. Get people to come in and see what you actually do. And it's not just clicking a button.
Clicking the button.
That famous line. So we're nearly at the end of this episode. So what we always discuss in this podcast is, what is an idea or something that you've seen that's made you green with envy?
I think agreeing with envy for me, and it's actually a really simple one, and we have looked at it, but it's very expensive. It's to have your sort code and account number checks in the payroll system. So not somebody just adding a bank of what are correct. It's like to a live database.
Yeah.
Because the amount of times we upload a BACS file and there's rejection because someone's put the bank details in wrong. I think if it was 3 steps down the line where you type it in, no, it's not valid, or that sort code and that account number don't match.
Yeah. So like when you go into the bank and you're paying a friend and it says this
Validate.
account name matches that I'm paying Adam Ford, and it says yes, we've found a match. So something like that.
Something like that I think would be so helpful, because the amount of times we upload a file, then we go back to the customer, then they have to ring the employee, then the employee fills a new form in, then we type it in the system, then we do a new BACS file. It's just a massive process for something so simple. And there is options out there, but it's just so expensive to keep it live. I think because there's so many sort codes and account numbers and it's updated daily. But I do think if there's something like that, that'd be a great win for us.
Yeah, I've had the trauma of a valid account number and sort code being used
for the wrong person.
For the wrong person, it got paid into that account, and the bank won't send it back because it was a valid payment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something I've experienced in the past. My green with envy, it's a historical one really, but we use faster payments at Phase 3, and we've advocated for that for a number of years now in terms of payroll processing. Some customers still prefer BACS. I remember when faster payments was really quite new, and we used to have open checks. Yeah. So you wrote a check for cash basically, and it was signed by the finance manager, and then we were banking with Barclays at the time, and what you could do was fax over a list of faster payments, and somebody at the bank would sit and type them in and actually process the faster payments. That seemed like a really massive step forward back then, that the person didn't have to go to the bank, especially in the month where all the people with the surname S didn't get paid. And they had to write open checks for nearly all of them, and the banks in the town were going mental because they didn't have enough cash in to be able to pay everyone. So the thing that I'm advocating for is payroll to be processed on faster payments. That's my green with envy. We've got it, and I think it makes other people green with envy.
It does.
But I also think that everybody should want that, basically, in terms of quicker processing, more time in payroll, and the ability to actually make corrections much quicker as well. And you do get the validation then when you're doing the payment, don't you, with faster payments?
You do with faster payments, yeah.
Okay, so that is the end of this week's episode. Thanks for joining us today for the HR Green Room. We'll be back with more honest conversations, brilliant guests, and of course our weekly Green with Envy and Green Light moments. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and join the conversation. And until next time, keep giving the green light to the things that matter.